and then
Okay.
others that join, then that'll be helpful. So welcome, everybody. Good morning. And we're really happy to sort of see you here this morning. And welcome to the Scholarship of Engagement. We've been working on this for quite a while, and we had it planned for April, so I'm so happy to see so many of you here. And we actually hope this is going to be the first in a series of workshops coming out of OSEP, talking about different aspects of community engagement, as well as help. The next workshop, we believe, is going to be around transitioning your courses to community engagement gen ed curriculum, and also working with faculty around the ethical reasoning and civic engagement courses that we call ERSI courses. So Hiba El-Tal, who's part of our OSEP team, is going to be creating a workshop to help faculty with this, especially on our St. Pete and Sarasota campus. So if you get a chance, there's also a lot of resources on the OSEP website. We're going to share all the resources from today's workshop along with other resources we have on there. One in particular, many of you might have received already, is the resource guide for faculty around the Scholarship of Engagement. So I want to thank Research and Innovation, Research One, for their sponsorship of our speakers, as well as Global Citizens Project, USF World, and the Office of Global Engagement at Sarasota Manatee. Without all of you working with us, who were willing to put on a big event, but was adaptable with us and created this event today. And then I want to thank Hiba El-Tal and Maria Trogolo. We were the team and the committee to put this together, and so we were really happy to do this. Without them, I couldn't have managed. And then finally, I want to thank Imad, because you can see Imad is here as our administrator, moderator, and teacher for all things Ultra Collaborate, so we can blame him if anything goes wrong. But thank you, Imad, for everything. And so before I introduce our speakers, I want to just take care of a few technical requests. Please make sure that you turn off or turn down your audio and video so we don't hear all kinds of things going on. But also because there's a lot of internet traffic, and so by turning those pieces off, everybody will be able to hopefully have a smooth presentation. Please if you have any questions, there's a chat feature at the bottom on your right, and please send any questions, and we're going to monitor those. And then we're going to be recording the session. So if you missed something, you want to hear it again, you want the resources, we're going to have it on there. We have a few people who weren't able to attend, but they are going to be able to access the slides and the recording as well. Okay. I think that's all the technical kind of things that I needed to go through. I'm going to keep our introduction pretty simple for our speakers, but by no means does it reflect their many talents and skills and expertise and knowledge, but we thought we'd just get this going. So Dr. Mary Jo Callan tells me she likes to be called MJ, so that's where you're at, is the director of the Ginsberg Center at the University of Michigan, and she leads the center's efforts in civic and community engagement in that office. Dr. Nirja Arab Amudan, I hope I said that correctly, is the Associate Director of Teaching, Research, and Academic Partnerships at the Ginsberg Center as well, the University of Michigan. And she is editor or on the editorial staff of the Michigan Journal of Community Service Learning. So that's how we found her. We went did our research, and when she asked us, we said, well, we went looking. So we're really happy to find these two amazing women who are going to share their knowledge with us today. And they've got a good 2 hours planned for you and a lot of expertise. And so at this point, I am going to take off my video and my audio and turn it over to them.
All right.
Great. Well, thanks,
Great.
Lily.
And Mary Jo, let me know when you want me to start the slides, but maybe we can kick off things first.
I think you could do it. You could start pulling them up now. That's great.
Okay. Great.
We are delighted to be with you all this morning, virtually. There we go. Thanks, Nirja.
No problem.
You can let me walk you through our plan for this morning. You can go to the next slide.
Yep.
We are clear. Well, okay, let me tell you about Ginsberg Center. Sorry. So the Ginsberg Center is a civic and community engagement center at the University of Michigan. We are fundamentally about cultivating and stewarding public scholarship and frankly public engagement with communities in and around the University of Michigan campus, 3 campuses, but especially the Ann Arbor campus, but also throughout the United States and lots of global engagement as well. Our work has 3 primary constituencies. It all starts with community, really listening to what communities are prioritizing, struggling with, challenged by, and interested in working on, and then connecting those partners with faculty and students all in service to social change for the public good. So in addition to the work we do as a center that focuses on social justice education with students and supporting faculty, community, and public engagement, we are, as Lily mentioned, we're the publisher of the Michigan Journal of Community Service Learning. And we do this, and we'll talk more about the journal later, but really as our contribution to building the field of community engagement and public scholarship overall. All right, let's move on to the agenda for this morning. And you can go ahead. Oh, there you go. So we've done our brief introductions. We are going to go pretty quickly through the content to get to some opportunities to practice. In part because Lily has already, I know that you all have done some foundational work, but also Lily has shared the handbook on community engaged scholarship, and it is really quite a resource. And so you have that. Some of you have already, I'm sure, done a lot of acquainted yourself with it, and we definitely encourage you to continue to use it as a resource. So we're going to breeze through some, first of all, who's here, but then talk a bit about engaged scholarship, possibilities and benefits, challenges, and how to address those challenges, and then get into I think why you're all here, publishing community engaged scholarship and some opportunities to really think about your own work and applying it in a sort of publishing realm. So Nirja, I'll turn it over to you to talk a bit about what we've learned about who's here.
Yeah, so we really appreciate that you all shared both who you are and what's on your mind in terms of this topic. So we wanted to, just as we've gone through enough of these sessions, we don't want to spend our whole time doing introductions. So though we'd love to know who's here. So if you'd put your name and department in the chat and anything else you'd like to share, but that way we can at least see, I know we can see your names, but it's helpful to know, what department you're in. And we've already gotten those questions from you, which is what we'll review right now. And so, amongst those of you who RSVP'd for this session, it sounds like there's a lot of you who are on the tenure track, but many of you who are not. And I know, as Lily was saying in the beginning, there's many of you who are here on behalf of your departments and hoping to share this information back. So hoping this information can be helpful to you, and happy to help you in whatever way that you might need. In addition, we asked a little bit about your experience with community engaged scholarship. So It's interesting to note that about a third of you, a little bit over a third of you, have a bit of experience, quite a bit of experience, and so feel like you can help others or do it on your own. And so we invite you, those of you with more experience, to share that advice and experience as we, invite conversation throughout this this morning. And then another third of you wanted some support, and so we're happy to offer suggestions and resources today as part of our session. And a third of you are really new to this, and so we're glad to be here to help support your learning and help you get started. But it gives you an idea of the sort of breadth of experience available in the room today, or virtual room today. But about 70% of you, at least of those who had initially responded, have not yet published. So we're really hoping, again, that our session can really give you some suggestions, some resources for helping you get started in this process, which can be sometimes intimidating. But both Mary Jo, it's not just myself, both she and I are on the editorial board of our journal, so we're happy to share our experiences with that as we continue talking with you. And then we asked you a lot of questions, never mind the words in this word cloud because they don't quite work well, but a few of the themes we heard from you. Actually, Mary Jo, do you want to take this one? Or do you want me to?
You are on the phone.
All right, so we asked you, what your why is in terms of why you do this work. And a lot of you mentioned, I'm just going to highlight a few themes that came up. A lot of you mentioned that you're interested in contributing to change, that this kind of scholarship lets you do a different kind, perhaps, of work that is really focused on social change and social justice. And some of you are talking about wanting to strive for most effective ethical and research and practice. So this idea that this work helps you sort of continue to improve and think about your own practice and research, and that there's a benefit of this kind of community engaged scholarship to both students and hands-on learning, and that this is also tied to your own personal calling and passion for this work. So there's a real sense of personal motivation in doing this kind of scholarship. And many of you also mentioned that there's value and interest in working with and giving back to communities. And that it also aligns with department and university goals. So, right, there's all these multiple layers of benefit and why for why you're doing this work, and that it's a very relevant way of giving back. And there's a sense of responsibility that as institutions, as folks in higher ed, that there's responsibility in doing this work. So I think we always talk in our sessions about motivations, because so much of that helps us stay motivated when some of this work gets challenging, both in terms of partnership or in terms of scholarship, in terms of writing, or even hearing back from editors. So to really remember that you have lots of reasons for doing this work that are really grounded in both your personal experiences and your interest in supporting and contributing to communities around you. So we can move on a bit. I don't, Mary Jo, do you want to pause it all there, or you think we're good to go?
No, let's go for it.
All right. So we wanted to highlight a few, benefits and possibilities of engaged scholarship. Again, we know there's some of you who have some experience, but some with less. So we wanted to just give a little bit of a framing.
So again, a lot of this is in the handbook you have and readily available elsewhere. But we wanted to share a couple of just foundational definitions. So community engaged scholarship. Thinking about it really as engaged research and other creative activities, that some of it aligns with sort of traditional understanding of research and scholarship, that is the discover new knowledge, but also developing new insights, translating knowledge, applying knowledge. But the key for both of these definitions, and obviously the hallmark of community engaged scholarship, is it really is done in partnership and collaboration with community partners. So it's really putting, and we'll talk more about this obviously, but it's putting community partners and community members in the seat of partners and agents in the scholarship. And we'll talk a little bit about how we define scholarship. Go ahead, Nirja. So we think about community engaged scholarship on a spectrum. There is no one way to engage in community engaged scholarship, and it can legitimately range from involving partners in real and authentic ways, but not as deeply or as as centrally, perhaps. So really thinking about the university scholar as driving the research. Maybe it's your idea and you go find community partners to contribute. To sort of along then toward the right, more community involvement. So really engaging with communities. All of these things, partners really should be agents and considered partners in the production of knowledge or the application of knowledge and understanding what that means. And then I know that some of you shared in your surveys. I mean, you've done a lot of this. Many of you are doing community-based participatory research. Is a pretty deep engagement with communities where it's a really co-creation, certainly, but also really developing the project together, really fully partnership informed in developing the research questions and the entire project. To complete community involvement, really community driven and owned. Community partners or community members come up with, here's what we're researching or want to research, and maybe they come and find you as a scholar to contribute in certain ways. A couple of obviously really important pieces of community engaged scholarship, in addition to the partnership and collaboration, really that the goal of community engaged scholarship, at least the way we are thinking about it and the way our journal and many journals are thinking about it, is a differentiator is that the products that come from this scholarship are meant to be public goods. They are meant to be shared with the public and really owned as a public resource in the public domain. Go ahead, Nirja. We think about scholarship falling into all of the key pillars of academia, teaching, research, and service, and then the integration of those three is really where the magic happens. And so we subscribe, as do most folks doing community engaged scholarship, to Boyer's framing of scholarship of engagement. And many of you know Ernest Boyer really called on universities, and especially research universities, and I know USF is a research university, to reconnect their academic mission to practical social concerns. That was about 30 years ago, and here we are today, and I think this is continues to be the challenge of higher ed and academia in this moment. That is too much like many other moments that we've seen. So the scholarship of engagement really expands the concept of scholarship beyond just the discovery of new knowledge to really include and honor teaching and the application of knowledge, integration of research, teaching, and service. Go ahead, Nirja. And you want to take it from here, Nirja? Oh, you're muted.
That's really helpful. All right, thanks for that. So, as Mary Jo has been highlighting sort of the context of community scholarship, I think we wanted to just highlight a few things about what's unique about publishing in this area. I think some of the key elements that we thought about is the process of partnering, right? That engagement itself looks different than sort of traditional research. So this idea of needing to consider the community partner, and as Mary Jo mentioned, depending on how they're involved, maybe from start to finish, maybe it's just in the initial idea, maybe it's for the product. So thinking about what that partnership looks like. And that the community partner voice and perspective is really a key part of this as well. So again, understanding that community partners have knowledge and expertise of their own to contribute, and then that can sometimes be at odds with the ways that we are called upon within higher ed to frame our research, frame our ideas. And so how do we make space for the knowledge and expertise of our partners in ways that still fit within this sort of scholarship realm? And that there's a piece where we really, as Mary Jo mentioned, thinking about the outcomes for our partners. So sometimes when we are focused on scholarship, especially traditional scholarship, we are really just thinking about sort of academic outcomes and we're not necessarily thinking about whether those outcomes have any relevance for our partners. And community engaged scholarship, a key part of what people are at least trying to consider. There's some challenges with this, but that have been talked about in the field. But I think it's helpful to just recognize that that's something that the field of engaged scholarship is trying to do. Is there anything you all would add? You can either add it in the chat or unmute yourself and comment. Anything else that those who've published or have tried, been involved already in community engaged scholarship? Anything else you would add that you feel like is maybe unique to this area? And time never moves so slowly, except on a virtual call when literally no one says anything. So I will give it maybe 30 more seconds. But as a deep extrovert, it is really hard to listen to silence. So yes, I can repeat the question. Absolutely. If anybody has anything else to add, and I'll get to your question for Shant in one sec. The question that I had posed was just, is there anything else you would add to sort of what those who publish in community engaged scholarship, anything else you'd add that you think is particularly different or unique about it versus traditional scholarship? And your question is, can students that are engaging be considered part of the community? So for sure, students, we have definitely received and we have published articles where students are part of the process of community engaged scholarship. Often though, when we think about communities, we're thinking about those outside of the university. So there's been a lot of scholarship that looks at the sort of benefits of upon student learning of community engagement. So in that sense, right, they're still part of the community engaged scholarship experience, but I would probably say that they are considered part of the university community. Mary Jo, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that as Nirja said, I would say there are three strains. I mean, there's lots of strains, but three main strains of published scholarship, and that is the experience and impact on students, and that is by and large the predominant focus of the last 35 years of publicly engaged or community engaged scholarship. So impact on students, and we would really be thinking about mostly students as not necessarily part of community. And then, of course, one strain is looking at faculty motivations and impacts and community impacts, where I would say that there is a growing strain of published scholarship and certainly thinking about students is when students are engaging in their own communities or in communities from where they hail. So I think there could be a way to frame students as community members or community partners, but generally speaking, we'd be thinking of them as inside the university.
And Darlene, to your question about IRB, I think that's a big one, which is for those who haven't looked at the chat, talking about the sort of, is it possible to get retroactive IRB? I'm not going to speak to how it works on your campus. I think that one thing that's been raised on ours and as well as other campuses is just the need for sort of separate or a sort of at least a component of IRB that's recognizing the variation in community IRB, to have a community sort of oriented IRB process, because often when you're doing community engaged scholarship, some of the issues, we certainly still want to be thinking about human subjects and sort of the consequences for sort of security and privacy, but also that sometimes things are just murky in a different way in community engagement. So to actually include community partners on IRB boards to be able to sort of weigh in on the process of the IRB approval, so that community partners' perspectives are actually considered as well. So I don't have off the top of my head, Mary Jo might, any institutions that actually have already done this, but I know that's something that's been discussed a bit within the field. So I don't know about the retroactive IRB. I think that can be really challenging. But often, because much of community engaged scholarship, some of it at least, can usually fall under the, you're not collecting, it falls within many of the exceptions, but I can't speak that. It depends on your project and what you're actually collecting too, and how private the personal information is. All right. So we didn't want to start on the sort of the downside of things, but we also recognize part of the sometimes the sort of the the learning curve is some of the challenges. So we wanted to sort of acknowledge those up front, and then also offer you some resources for how you might address them. We've certainly thought about these a lot. So some of the, and it sounds very small, but these are kind of big topics, so we'll highlight those as quickly as we can. A few of the things we talked about were that partnership, again, because partnership is at the core of a lot of community scholarship, that it can take more work, but we also realize and value the critical expertise that community partners add. Brooke, to your question, I don't think you should just not do it, but I do think that it is having some conversations maybe with others who are also trying to do this work and challenging IRB to be able to handle it, right? So it might pause your work, but I would encourage you to keep trying to do it and work with other institutional administrators to be able to sort of help your IRB come along to this process, right? It might not be that they set up a community IRB, but that at least they're able to recognize how to help you do this as quickly as possible, right, to get the IRB approval. And we can try to help find some resources, perhaps. I don't know, Mary Jo, we might be able to swing some things, send some things your way, Lily, so that you can share with folks about that. And then we figure.
Let me just add real quickly, Nirja. So we'll send some ideas and resources your way, but I also encourage you. We've had good success in really talking in advance, like kind of, and maybe Lily, I hate to put you on the spot. This would be a great sort of consideration for your office to play a role in just engaging with, at least for USF folks, your research office and your folks who are coordinating or managing the various IRBs, and just have some proactive conversations sharing kind of, here's the kinds of scholarship folks are interested in. What do we need to know from you to make sure that we have, we can put some proactive processes and some flexible processes in place to the extent possible.
We can do that. You know, they worked with us when we put together Carnegie, and we talked about, a lot of the large grants that involved, and they're tracking community work as well and community grants. So I think we can look at that.
Yeah, and Elizabeth, thanks for that point too, that generally IRB is not, as much as I think some of us experience IRB as a constraint, that they're often, they're really trying to help us do our work usually. And so, that it might just require some explaining and understanding, and as more of you do community scholarship, there may be less issue, right, over time too. Yes, Beatrice, that's a really good point, Beatrice. The issue about gaining consensus across partners on analysis findings, which we're going to be talking a little bit about, actually, so you've done a great job of helping me transition to the next piece. So we will talk about that a bit. So one of the things we use a lot, so this is one of the handouts we shared earlier, so I'm happy to put the link into the chat if you all want to pull that up. I know some of you might be only on a single screen, so but just in case anybody has two screens and wants to look at that as well, this is the public participation spectrum. There's a handout that we gave in advance. So I'm just going to briefly talk about it. We use this spectrum to help people start thinking about sort of where they might fall along this spectrum. So it shifts, oops, I guess I don't have the, oh dear. Okay, well, I have, it's not as helpful when you don't have all the categories. I think I put the wrong one in there. So anyway, when you look at the handout, maybe I can switch easily. It goes from inform to empower, and the idea is that at the inform level, the public is really getting assistance in understanding a problem, right? So the idea that what we provide as academic partners is really this idea of, we're going to give you information, we'll keep you informed about a topic, and you shift from inform to consult, where we'll actually acknowledge the concerns you have and provide some feedback and get information from the public to inform, to consult on this problem. Involve, we might actually kind of go back and forth a little bit more, whereas collaborate is you're actually working together to solve a problem. And then finally, the last phase on the original spectrum it says empower. We've changed that to community control, right? This idea that you get to make the final decision as community partners on how you'll get to use this information. And so this idea that one of the things we talk about a lot is that you need to have a conversation. Where do you find yourself falling on the spectrum? Where does your partner fall? How might you differ? And that one thing we were talking about recently with some folks on our campus is that this expectation might be changing over time, right? So that you might actually have an understanding up front that actually this is going to be a consulting approach. We're going to, sort of help you solve this problem, but we're going to give you information. Then over time, they realize the partner might say, well, actually, we really want to collaborate more. We want to have more control over the way the things are analyzed, how the data is shared, whether we control the data afterwards, and that might evolve over time. So it's important to have this conversation up front, but also as you continue partnering on a project. And related to that is the next piece, which is this idea that, the role of community partners. We just wanted to emphasize that, while community engaged scholarship doesn't have to involve partners, which we certainly, as journal editors, have seen articles where it was clearly community partners or community organizations were the site of scholarship, but it was clear that the partners were not involved in the scholarship. We want to encourage you to consider this. There's lots of research to support the value of partners in this. As we mentioned earlier, they have valuable expertise to share. Their skills can be a complement to your own scholarship. And it's really thinking about where they want to and where they can and want to contribute. So we know some community partners have lots of experience actually doing community engaged scholarship. So they actually can be researchers right along with you. And so this is another tool that we were sharing earlier, which is the research guide. And I gave both the research guide, I'm going to share that first in the chat, and then the teaching guide, which just basically walks through the typical process of either research design or course design, and has you consider both what you're thinking about as you go through the process, from goals to objectives to partnership to assignments, for example, in teaching, to evaluation, and then thinking about what your partner might be bringing to this. So both the organization you might be working with or the community members you're trying to engage with, and as well as your students, right? So especially in a teaching environment, how much control might you be able to share or give over to both your community partners and your students? And depending on where you are at in your own process, it might be challenging to consider giving up ownership or sharing ownership over this process with your partners and students. And for others, it might be that you're already thinking about that, and it's maybe one or two of these questions you hadn't considered before. But we wanted to provide that as a resource. Finally, I think that to Mary Jo's point earlier, she's talking about, we'll be talking about this even more as we keep talking, about the kinds of products, and to recognize that, again, your partners might have an interest in not only supporting the academic products you're creating, but also in having a variation or a different output that is related to but separate from the academic product you're creating. So with having a conversation up front, and that goes back to Beatrice's question, that talking up front about where they want to, how do they want to be involved, and then how do you decide if you have a disagreement about the findings, right? So if you look at the analysis and you come to one conclusion, your partner comes to another, how do you decide to resolve those conflicts, right? And some of those conversations can be challenging, and it's important to at least talk up front about how you might address conflict, and then have to have that conversation again. If conflict, if maybe that's too strong, but disagreement occurs, how will you resolve it? It automatically defaulting to us on the university side being the sort of arbiters of the conversation isn't exactly equitable. So just want you to consider having these conversations up front and throughout your partnership experience. Any questions about these tools or these guides? One thing that we had discussed on our campus that came up in a couple of our sessions is the value of, even if the partner is not involved in the data collection, because for time or for lots of reasons, bringing them into the process of data analysis can be really helpful to just have a completely different perspective on what the data means, and then deciding how you might then write about that. So just wanted to highlight that. If there's any more questions, feel free to throw them into the chat, but I'll keep going. And then to think about, let's see. Yes, and so we wanted to, this is the same slide, but we wanted to share a quote from one of our faculty members that we've talked with, and he says, when you are just working with a data set, and that data set always has time for you, that data set is always available. Whereas community partners, they're real people with real lives. they may disappear and be unavailable for certain periods of time. They may change their priorities. So this is just highlighting while he really finds value in working with partners, some of the challenges that come with, just want to acknowledge that there can be some challenges with having differing priorities and differing timelines. So just wanted to highlight that a little bit. All right. And this goes to some of the things we've been talking about, is that one project can lead to a lot of different outcomes. So this is just a very pretty visual that highlights some of this. This is actually from an article that we also shared. And again, I'll give that link in the chat, which is the Friend article on creating tips for constructing a promotion and tenure dossier that documents engaged scholarship endeavors. I know many of you are not thinking about tenure promotion, or that's not what you're focused on, but it gives a lot of examples of how one project can become many different things. And I think sometimes we found that there's, if not resistance, sort of a hesitation to think about a project having multiple outcomes. And so one example would be that if you're doing an article on affordable housing, that you might do an article on community resistance to an affordable housing development. You might also have a fact sheet on affordability challenges in a particular neighborhood or community. You might also develop a logic model with your community partners for developers or public officials to use in advancing housing development by engaging neighbors. Or you might also create a policy brief for commissioners considering various sites for affordable housing. So just to give an example how the same project that is focused on affordable housing outcomes can actually lead to multiple results and actually lead to multiple publications. So that can be really helpful to consider. And one thing we did is, and it's not doing what I want, so I'm not sure how to get that to happen. There we go. So is to consider that each of them can result to, each example of journal articles can lead to, each example, sorry, of products can lead to both public and academic products. So here, we've just given some examples how, like, journal articles are obviously very academic focused, but posters and presentations can both have a public and academic outcome. Again, with fact sheets, and we just list some of the audiences you might be able to consider who might benefit from the academic or the public outcomes of each of these things. So just wanted to highlight some of that.
I just wanted to
add,
Catherine, thanks for adding the other challenge. I totally agree. The inaccessibility of academic writing is absolutely a challenge for many of our community partners who it might be misaligned with their background, their skill level, and their interests and interest in terms of what they're interested in, and their interest in terms of what the benefit for them or their constituents will be. So that is partly why we have drawn on some existing scholarship, but really done some of our own refinement of, like, let's talk about all the ways that we can serve excuse me, both the academic scholarly interests and the community scholar and community practitioner interests.
Yeah, and that's one thing that we did in our own faculty grants that we offer on our campus, is we actually encourage/require folks to actually produce both academic and public products, so that we know that the community partner is actually getting things that they can either both contribute to and benefit from. And Beatrice, yes, that it can be really complicated to figure out in a grant application. And I think part of that, and I think each grant application is so different, so I won't speak to that too much, but I think, yes, it can be hard to, sometimes what we do in our grant application is we just want to know that the partner is involved, and so we just want them to be named and that they've agreed to be part of the process, knowing that the process will continue to evolve through the process of actually completing the grant project, so grant funded project. All right, so this is another handout. MJ's going to take over, but I'm going to share yet another handout that we shared earlier.
Okay, so while you're just sharing that, or I don't know if we already shared it in advance.
We did.
Okay, great. And we're going to get to this other challenge in just a second. Jessica, thank you. So essentially, this is a listing of some of the community engaged journals that are out there right now publishing. These are really the non-disciplinary or non-discipline specific journals. Many of you, I saw there are folks from business and biology and engineering and other disciplines with us today, and your discipline or field has often multiple journals that also publish community engaged scholarship. So this is by no means an exhaustive list, but we wanted to use it to illustrate again what some of the journals that are really focused on community engaged scholarship are publishing. So I'm going to give you I'm actually going to give you a few minutes. I'm just going to be quiet. I'm also an extrovert, so it's hard for me, but I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes to review, sort of take in the context there, and then I'll continue on. So I'm going to give it 60 seconds.
Longest 60 seconds of your life.
Okay, so a couple of things. So one, I would love to hear if folks have questions about what's included here. Lily, thank you. There's a much more extensive listing in the guidebook or the workbook that Lily has shared. And so that's definitely, we encourage you to check that out to really give you ideas about where you might publish. Also, looking across the top of each of the columns might also, in addition to the products slides that Nirja just shared, this might also give you ideas about how you might frame your scholarship or what you want to write about, just looking at the sort of sections or topics. So that might be helpful as well. But we'd love to answer any questions folks have or just any reactions. And then can I also just weigh in on Jessica? Thanks for bringing that up. I'm going to talk later about something that the Michigan Journal is particularly interested in that relates to your question, is just thinking about ways to perhaps scale your community engaged scholarship. So I'll get to that in a minute. So any reactions, any surprises, or any particular questions? I think a key takeaway, obviously you'll have this to keep, and Lily has a longer, a more extensive listing in the workbook. Just to say, partly what we want to share with you is there's a lot of publications out there. These few are very specifically focused on wanting to publish and share community engaged scholarship, really in service to two things: building the field, but also really benefiting communities. So we wanted to share that with you. All right, anything else on this point, Nirja?
I think the only thing I would add, just that I know that one of the things I like about this chart is that it helps you see more quickly which journals take what kinds of outcomes, because sometimes it's hard to look at quickly. Like you can look at a title and know, like, yes, they take articles, but what kinds of things, what other kinds of things? And so even knowing the kinds of writing you're trying to do to realize, oh, this is better suited for a particular journal versus another. And so we'll talk a little bit more about our own journal because, we're here. So, but we wanted to first start with, some suggestions for how you might approach your own scholarship. So.
And these are pretty self-explanatory, probably, if you just sort of thinking about this, and certainly in what we've already shared. But as you were thinking about your own community engaged scholarship, really look at the journals we just shared, look at the resources that Lily's office has to share, and really think about aligning your manuscript to what that journal is focused on, or what, each journal, as you can see in just the short matrix we included, has multiple foci typically. Also, again, remembering that your ideas could work for multiple outlets that are both academic and public outlets. It's important to ground your article in relevant extant literature and research, just to provide additional credibility to the argument or the article or the topic that you're researching, the assertions you're making, etc. This one's really, we see this a lot in our submissions for publication in our journal, and we hear a lot about this from other publishers and editors. Give attention to the discussion and implications of your research or your scholarship. Like, what's the so what? So what does this mean? What are potential implications? What are things we need to consider? What's next? The summarizing your design and then your results without any so what is not usually not going far enough for many outlets.
Can I add one thing to that, Mary Jo? I think tying back to also the way that the literature is used, that even in the way that you ground your study in prior literature needs to also explain the why. Why does this matter? So that sometimes what happens, there is not enough understanding of what is, you know that you're supposed to talk about unique contribution, but why does it matter to the field? What have you added to the field? We found that we get submissions that we're like, okay, this is a really cool idea, but I don't know that it advances the field in any real substantial way. It doesn't have to be like earth-shattering, right? But to understand what's already there, to know. So it's not just it's sort of the what. You can't focus, I guess, the attention only on the what, right? The so what and the now what, really. The so what especially, I think, both in the literature and in the discussion is really important.
Yeah. Although the now what, just another way to frame your own scholarship, thinking about what others have done and how you might pick up some of what others have done in your own scholarship is also sometimes a helpful avenue for folks.
Yeah.
And then, excuse me, if you're submitting something to a non-disciplinary journal like the ones we just shared, think about the jargon that you're using. Think about language that when you're talking with colleagues, it makes perfect sense, but when you get outside of your school or college or discipline, or even outside of the academy, and I'll talk about that in terms of the Michigan Journal, but just really try to constrain your jargon and the vocabulary that to you is just part of how you breathe now, but to others is really detracts from understanding what you're trying to communicate. Let's go on to the. Oh, go ahead.
For those who've already published, I think just wanted to give them an opportunity if there's anything else you would add for suggestions.
Lily, anything you want to add? I know you've published.
I have, and there's a few other people that have. I don't know if you saw Liz Strom's also, that sometimes she'll do a deliverable for which like a community, like an assessment, but then it doesn't turn into, an article that you can publish with. What I found for me, was that I was actually writing about what I was teaching, and that it was unique. So I wasn't having trouble finding an outlet for that because I was teaching in a different way. And so I think sometimes faculty and instructors forget about that aspect of working with their partners to meet, especially as we're moving into the gen ed curriculum. I'm hoping that faculty will think about, the unique ways that they're teaching and reaching the community. And then now, how are you doing it remotely? I think people are interested in that as well. And so
Mhm.
I don't want them to forget about that as a kind of scholarship as well.
Elizabeth, the other thing I would add too is we've had a few of our faculty who've actually written about the process of creating a deliverable, such as what you created. So rather than publishing on the needs assessment itself, which, at least for our journal wouldn't work, right? And we can talk more about why that might be, that there might be a place to talk about, the process of partnering. And so there's some journals that look at that as well, if that's helpful. Right. All right, Joe, you want to keep going?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay.
So just want to share a little bit about the Michigan Journal on community service learning. It is an open access journal. We focus on research, theory, pedagogy, and other issues related to service learning, campus community partnerships, and engaged and public scholarship in higher ed. So that's our particular focus. We really have, especially in the last several years, centered everything that we are doing in terms of both the why and the how of our work, really around our core principles of inclusion, diversity, and equity. So, in fact, being open access, we, I think, made that switch now 3 years ago, could have been 4. What is time anymore? But so we're an open access journal. We really focus on including multiple disciplines and more, and I think more specifically interdisciplinarity and transdisciplinarity, really looking at if you're thinking about community engagement and community partners, understanding that none of the pressing social concerns they're dealing with exist within or can be addressed by one discipline. And so we really encourage articles that are, looking across disciplines. I guess I didn't share our history. We are the oldest journal looking at service learning and community engaged scholarship, founded in 1994. And we actually started the journal to really help establish the field of community engagement as a scholarly enterprise. And many of you know that still remains a challenge in some Research One universities. So we have more work to do, but we have helped to build a field. And we've been a really key outlet for, now actually, thousands of scholars since our founding in 1994. We do a lot of work to challenge the norms of sort of the who and what is included in this field. So we've done a lot of work to expand authors, including emerging scholars. We also publish a lot of folks that, if you're looking at the extant literature, and some of the big names, most of them have published in the journal. We have really focused, especially in the last few years, of inviting, contributions beyond just social science research. We definitely still publish a lot of social science research, but we're looking also at some of the hard sciences, especially business, et cetera. And then we focus on, we've doubled down really on methodologies that go beyond sort of the quasi-experimental positivist approaches. So thinking about CBPR, thinking about qualitative research, and some of the narrative kind of articles have been really important in the last several years. And also very aligned with respecting and honoring different ways of knowing. And so that's been an important shift, certainly for the journal. And I don't think we were ahead of the curve on that one. I think we were behind the curve on that. And then additionally, we have a pretty transparent and collaborative peer review process, which is not the norm, certainly in peer-reviewed journals across the spectrum. We really encourage conversation between reviewers for their own learning, but also then with authors, so that it's not sending your article to a black box and not knowing the what or the why of whether you get accepted or not. So that's been an important piece as well. Anything else you'd add, Nirja, on this piece?
No, I think you covered everything.
All right, great. So the focus, next slide. The focus of our journals, again, community engaged scholarship, and certainly the what and the how, but we also want the so what. What are the implications? The kinds of articles tend to fall into methods, processes, partnerships, and engagement. We do have program descriptions and case studies that contribute to field building. So a case study that is novel is something we might publish. That isn't, we don't emphasize case studies in our publication, but we do sometimes publish them if they are novel and field building. We publish critical reflections and lessons learned, again, when it is novel and adding to our field and body of knowledge, what we understand, how we understand it. And then we definitely are interested in results and impacts, especially for community and community partners, and then the partnership process. We do publish a lot on impacts for students, but I will be honest with you, we have that is less of what we're publishing recently, just because there is such a huge body of research on impacts for students. But there's always novel approaches, novel learnings that we're interested in publishing. So there is still a dearth of actually impacts on faculty and for faculty doing community engaged scholarship. So we are interested in impacts on faculty and staff who are really central stewards for this work. Excuse me. So that's the community engaged scholarship, the scholarship that is engaging with communities. And then what we're really, our sweet spot at the Michigan Journal is the scholarship of community engagement, sort of the meta of community engaged scholarship. So looking at conceptual frameworks, paradigms, theories, and models. But again, anything we publish, we are also really interested in the so what, and how is this novel, or how does this contribute to what we know and how we do things.
And Mary Jo, there was a question from Beatrice about positionality, which I think is totally, it's a fantastic question, and it's something that actually our current issue that we are currently reviewing manuscripts for particularly focuses on that. Do you want to talk to that a little bit, Mary Jo?
Sure. I mean, I can speak to our kind of how we're thinking about it and why we took on our current issue. So we are in the midst of reviewing manuscripts for an issue that is a collaboration with the National Center for Institutional Diversity, and we have two guest editors. One who is Tania Mitchell, who is sort of a luminary in the field of service learning and engaged learning, and then Tabby Chavot, who is the director of the National Center for Institutional Diversity, and it is specifically focused on the intersection of social justice and community engagement. And a piece of what we've asked authors to submit with their submissions is a reflective piece, a self-reflection of what it means to be a community engaged scholar, and how your identity impacts that and is impacted by that. And so I think for us, we are trying to challenge and interrogate the idea of objectivity. So we encourage people to really own their own positionality, their own potential bias in the process. We are, again, trying to be post-positivist. We are scientists, but we are scientists who understand that none of us come to any of our work with objectivity, and none of us leave ourselves behind. So I don't know if Neerja, you want to add to that, or Beatrice, if you want to reflect on anything additional.
No, I thought you handled that very well, Mary Jo, from my end.
Well, I've got the okay from Neerja, so thank you, Neerja. I appreciate that. All right, let's see.
Okay.
Next.
Sure.
We on to the next slide here. All right. Again, we've covered a lot of this, but we are a peer-reviewed journal, so that's part of our process, is to peer review the submissions for us. It's theory, practice, and pedagogy. We are looking for a variety of disciplines, and this is our ongoing call at the journal. Again, we're in the midst of this special issue looking at the intersection of social justice and community engagement, but we also have an ongoing call that sort of has these as our criteria. We encourage accessible and engaging writing style. Again, we want we are the publishers of a journal that is really important to our field, and it's what we've heard loud and clear from scholars who publish in our journal. I know we're not focused on tenure and promotion today, but it has been a really critical resource for nurturing and protecting scholars within the academy who are doing socially just work. And so we want to maintain that credibility as an academic journal, but we also want to be accessible to the people who are making our field and our work possible, and that is our community partners. So thinking about accessibility and in how we're writing is really important. And then we also do reviews of books on community engagement and service learning. So you can certainly find more at our website. I would say, and Neer just touched on this, and I've touched on this, but we're really looking for systematic inquiry and evidence-based approaches. There are, as we shared a few slides ago, there are journals that are looking for reflections and lessons learned and works in progress and promising approaches, and so there's outlets for lots of different kinds of writing. We're, I would say, first and foremost, continuing to look to build this field as one that is at the center and the heart of really the purpose of higher ed, and so continuing to ensure we have a credible publication that nurtures and protects scholars today who are going to be positional leaders tomorrow is really important to us.
Awesome. Great. Sorry. Hi there. All right, I'm back. Great. So we want to now shift to letting you take all of what we did, what we've been talking about, and start to think about it for your own work. We know this is kind of a little bit of a major switch, but we want to spend the rest of our time giving you time to try to apply this to your work. We have a way we want you to try to do that. We're going to have you pitch your research. This is really taken from a writing retreat that we highly encourage you, once things are open and able to happen. It's a terrific, both Mary Jo and I have attended as guest editors, or as editors, and it's a great experience. They really encourage folks who are, even though they're new to engaged scholarship or have some experience but just want to sort of get some more support, they're a terrific group of people. Anyway, so they use these research pitches, and we thought this would be really helpful for you all to consider. So essentially what you're going to do is you're going to try to craft a pitch that you would share with an editor, right? So to be able to say, like, this is why you should publish me. At the pen to paper writing retreat, you actually get to work, if you attended it, folks get to actually practice their pitches and then pitch it to actual journal editors, which is what Mary Jo and I have both done. And it's a lot of fun for us as editors to hear from lots of different people. It's a great exercise to help you think about getting to the purpose, the sort of the sort of core of your work. So the first piece of it is the what of your work. So we were talking about this earlier, right? So to understand in a very short amount of time, I should also mention the pitch, you're only allowed 3 minutes. So this is not one of those things where you get to talk for half an hour and like kind of get to the point eventually, which I know I have certainly done before. So it really takes a bit of work and refinement to be able to really get to the heart of what of your work. And then thinking about the why. Why does this work matter? Why does it, who's involved in this? What's important about that? And then finally, which then gets to the impact, right, of your work, how the field and the community is going to change, what's new or interesting. So this is what Mary Jo was talking about in terms of sort of the sort of implications, right, to really understand why we should care about this is to understand how it's going to impact the field. We understand that we're giving you a really short amount of time to think about this. What we wanted to do is use this time to give you some space. So to do this, and then knowing that we had talked with Lily, I think earlier, about us coming back and being able to meet with each of you or some of you individually if you'd like to chat with us about this and sort of pitch and get some feedback. We're happy to do that in a follow-up session or through consultation appointments, whatever we end up figuring out works best. But we thought this would be a way to sort of take some of these ideas. And I know that I will just acknowledge, I know that when I've come to sort of virtual sessions, I'm like, oh my God, I have to do stuff too. Like I thought I could just listen. So I want to acknowledge that some of you might be panicking a bit, perhaps, or at least balking a little. We want to encourage you that this is a chance for you to just work through your ideas, right, with other people who are also in the same boat that you're in. So the way we're going to do that is we were going to give you 15 minutes. And we also wanted to recognize, again, as both very deep extroverts, that what we like to do is to talk ideas out. We do this all the time. And I'm so grateful that MJ is also an extrovert, so we can do this a lot. But we also recognize some of you might actually want to think without someone talking at you. So we're going to give you a couple of options. Imad's helping us set up breakout rooms. And you have the option to stay in the main room and work on your own, or go and talk out this piece, right? So you'll have 15 minutes to start thinking about that. And I'm going to encourage you, we're not going to start the breakout rooms for a couple of minutes while Imad gets everything set up, but I want you to make sure you have the PDF of the session, or at least the prompts, or have the slides open. Let me see if I can give you, I'm going to give you the PDF of the slides so you can at least pull up the prompts, so that, because I know that when we go to breakouts, you won't be able to do that in the same way. Let me see if I can pull that up right now for you. Sure, I can do that. Sorry, it's going to take me 1 second. Imad, do you want to say anything as I'm getting this?
Well, it's ready. I'm going to hit start. It's going to get everybody into their own small groups.
Okay.
But they're going to be isolated from other groups, and we're going to remain in the main room. So if anybody wants to stay in the main room, just let us know.
That's right. And you should be able to move back to the main room on your own. Is that right, Imad?
I can allow that. Yeah.
Yes. I think that's what we want to try to do in this case, so that if you end up going into a breakout and you don't want to, you can move back to the main room yourself. And if you have trouble, feel free to contact one of us. I think you'll still be able to access that if you go to the chat feature and click on, click the moderator, talk to the moderators, and we can help you out with that. Before we start, let's just make sure everybody has access to the main slide, or the slide, so that you can all see the prompt, right, which would have been the previous one. Right, sorry, not that, this one. So I want you to be able to see this so you know what the prompt is. Hopefully, does everybody have access to anybody not able to get the slides? Okay. Lily, do you want to add something, or were you just?
Well, I put my hand up because this probably would be a good time. Dr. Strom has a research group, and so I thought, as people are moving into these groups, if you don't mind, Liz, now probably would be a good time to tell you, as you're thinking about groups or working together with groups, that she's got this wonderful group that women can work together. I don't think they exclude men, but it's working. And if she wanted to take a minute, so that as you're thinking about working with others and working on pitches, this might be another opportunity to work together. Do you want to go ahead and say something, Liz?
Sure, and also it's not it has nothing to do with women. I mean, it's just it's for scholars. So I'm the co-chair of something called the Scholars Strategy Network, and it's a national organization that helps faculty who do policy relevant research get put their research out and network with other similar scholars. So policy relevant research isn't always community based, and not all community based research has policy relevance, but there's probably a pretty big overlap among people who do community based research. A lot of us do research where we're looking at current events, whether it's about protests, inequality, and thinking, hey, I do research that actually says something about this, and how can I let policymakers know, or how can I publish an op-ed? And so Scholar Strategy Network is really oriented to faculty who want to do those sorts of things and talk about their research in ways that make sense outside the academy. And so there are chapters across the country. We have one in Florida, happens to be located at USF. And in the past, the chapter has put together events like how to write an op-ed or how to respond to the crisis in Puerto Rico. That was a couple of years ago. And we're going to be doing a lot more activities from a distance, I'm sure, moving ahead. So I simply asked Lily to give a 5-second pitch about that, not to take up the time of this event. But I posted a link to Scholars Strategy Network in the chat, and I'm about to post my email address. And I think the best way to talk further about this, if you have an interest, is simply to email me. I'll give you more information, and you can see whether you'd like to be on our mailing list, and then we'll be for events that we can do probably once the semester starts in the fall. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for sharing. I'm glad to learn about it. It seems like something we could also share on our campus that would be really helpful as well. I think we might be ready, Ahmad, to go ahead and start. So make sure you have the slides open so you have the prompt. And we're going to give you 15 minutes. And so I know Alexis mentioned she wants to stay in the main room. There might be others. Once you're in the breakouts, if you want to work independently, you can come back to the main room and work quietly. We won't talk to you. All right. So go ahead, Ahmad.
Okay, we're going to get started. All righty. Okay, so we remain in the main room. So probably, guys, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay,
Yep.
now we have two people who wanted to stay in the main room. I think that was Brooke, and so I'm going to move Brooke back to the main room.
And Alexis, too. I can move Alexis.
Okay.
Alexis has some interesting array of, and so and Brooke has some experience as well. So
Welcome back, Brooke.
Yeah, and Ahmad, I think maybe because you're doing it, I wasn't able to move Alexis. If you can move Alexis.
All right, I'll move Alexis. Okay.
Thank you. And I'm going to mute myself so I don't talk over, because it really is hard to concentrate if people are talking.
I'm going to do the same.
Okay.
hi, Alexis. Can she hear me now? Alexis, can you hear me? Okay, Beatrice wants, I don't think that, Beatrice says she doesn't know how the sessions work, and she would prefer to be in the general one.
Who?
Beatrice Padilla.
Beatrice. What group is this? Beatrice.
Can you find her, Rod?
Yes. Okay. Well, now this group's gonna get smaller actually, but I'm gonna move her to. Okay.
It looks like
It's okay if they're small, because even if they're just talking to one other person, it's fine. So Beatrice and Darlene both want to come back to the main room as well.
All right. Sure.
I'm gonna step away from my computer for just a couple of minutes. I'll be right back. This is Mary Jo.
Okay, you know,
and I really want to encourage us to not talk unless they have questions, because this room was meant for folks to be able to work without us commenting too much. And so I'm just going to send a note to the rooms, just so you know.
Okay. Do you not want me to talk to them?
You are welcome to talk to them. I just don't know what is most helpful to folks. But if they wanted to be in the main room to ask questions, I'm happy to do that. Or if people actually want to work on their own, it's harder when we're talking at them. That's what I was saying.
All right. So if you send that message, then I'll know because I can talk to them as well about thinking through their ideas if they want.
Um,
I don't think they quite understood what they were supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I'm sending a message to the rooms, don't worry.
okay. Well, we have a group of 5 and a group of 2, so I'm not sure if this is equally distributed. Um,
Beatrice, I'm going to pull up the slide. I think you can still see it. You're basically working on this pitch. So you're essentially going to try to share, craft a 3-minute message about your research. So you're doing the what of your work, the why of your work, and then thinking about how you can describe the impact of your work. It might be that your project is in the works and you're not sure yet, but just to start thinking about this is part of what happens when we get research, when we get proposals for manuscripts, for proposal submissions for our journal. We give folks very little space to say this is what matters, and what we find is when they don't do this work in advance, we can't guess as editors what this information is, right? So sometimes people will send us like the title and an abstract, and often abstracts don't do a great job of this. They're very descriptive about the what, but they don't tell us anything about the why or the impact. So that's what we're trying to give you some space to do. Does that help?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, but I mean, I have several research projects still going on, but most of them are not in the United States. So yeah, I'm just having some issues thinking of which one I should talk about, or maybe if I even want to talk about them. Maybe I just listen to what other people had to say. Yeah, I think that maybe even being engaged in the US and in this context that we're experiencing right now, maybe not the best one in many ways, between the COVID and between like the confrontation in society is a difficult thing. So just maybe more wondering how to get engaged in this context. How to even connect with the communities and the different communities. So maybe I'm just more reflecting on that and instead of talking about my work at this point.
That's fine. You feel free to use this space in the way that you find most useful.
Okay, thank you.
So do you publish qualitative research?
You talking to me, Lily?
Yeah, since you're
Hi.
there.
I just got back, but do we publish qualitative
Yeah.
research? We sure do.
Okay.
Yeah, we've really emphasized that in the last couple of years, especially. I'd say that our first 20 years was very much sort of quantitative, quasi-experimental, which there's obviously still a place for. But we've really tried to diversify, in particular around the research methods.
There's so many aspects of community engagement work that people write about, from teaching, from impact, which is, I think, the hardest to really address. What is the impact of our efforts when there's so many other variables that could impact?
Yeah.
You know, that's one of the things about Carnegie they asked, but it's really hard.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting from the perspective of having been a faculty publishing about it, to thinking about what do I publish about now, and even addressing faculty knowledge and expertise, providing these types of workshops. Do they make a difference? You know, what components might make the difference for faculty? How do we know that it made a difference? These are all like really big questions in our field. And it's theory of change. What is the theory of change for our field?
Yeah.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah, it is really interesting. It is the hardest. It is obviously, you know, it's hard, which is why it's almost entirely missing from the literature. It's really hard to do, and we encourage our faculty partners or folks who contact us interested in, you know, kind of the publishing on community impact. And we actually just did a special issue, I don't know, a few months ago it came out, specifically with a group from Canada, totally focused on community impact. So we could share that link with folks. But, you know, part of it is, you know, try it and think about, I think it's even challenging this notion that we can know specifically what was our contribution, and even that's it's like, it's not really a reality-based question when it comes to a lot of the community impact that we're working toward, in part because we are one of many. You know, if you even think about a collective impact effort, you can better at least say, oh, well, all of us together over the last, you know, year, 5 years, whatever, here's what's different. But none of us from a social science perspective, or thinking about educational research, or it's really hard to parse out, you know, really who did what and what was the ultimate determining factor. So I don't know. I encourage people. I think the hard sciences, in our effort in the social sciences to be credible, to build our own fields and prestige, took these hard science ideas and applied them, and they just don't all apply. I think, you know. So
I would agree with you. And there's so many. The College of Education has done an amazing job with teacher education close by at a school called Mort Elementary. And they went from an F rating to a C rating over time, working with a lot of other groups. And I think there's that collective impact. I've been to Tamarack Institute in Canada.
Oh, yeah.
Measuring, you know, their effects on poverty. But when I see Beatrice, and, you know, she's working with human trafficking. She's part of this larger group about human trafficking, and the impact and knowledge are around that and the work that students are doing. I think they underestimate.
Okay, guys, we're going to bring everyone back.
Yep.
So,
is everybody back in the room?
I'm going to bring him now. Okay.
Okay.
Come in.
Yeah, there's a few people who were trying to move and they couldn't figure out how, and I don't know if you had made it allowable for them to move back to the main room. I can't remember.
Yeah, well.
They were supposed to be able to come back on their but I wasn't sure.
Well, let's bring them back now. That sounds great.
Everybody's going to go back now to the main room, okay? All right.
Thanks, Ahmad.
All back.
All right, everybody's back?
Yep.
Great. So I know some of you ended up in a room by yourself. I'm not sure how that happened. Some of you had a chance to work through your pitches and had a great conversation. So at least a couple of the rooms that I visited. So we thought at this point, originally we had planned to have us do a little debrief here and then give you time to actually pitch. So try out this 3-minute pitch on others. Given some of the feedback we're getting, it looks like we might not want to do that, but we thought we could at least use this time to take questions, responses, maybe have some people share what they've come up with so far, if that would be helpful. Happy to do that. So those of you who actually worked on, the pitch or felt like you got a little bit of headway, would you like to share an example from what you thought about?
So I'm gonna, this is, oh good, here we go.
Oh,
Here's
great.
Anne.
Okay. I'm just reading it now.
Wow.
Oh, you don't know how to unmute. So you should be able to hit the microphone button at the bottom of your Collaborate screen, and that should unmute you if you'd like to talk that out, Anna. Does that help? You don't see it. Ahmad, is there a way to help that?
It should just scroll down maybe a little bit. Might be at the bottom of the screen so you can see it.
It might be right under the PowerPoint. If she looks right under the PowerPoint, there should be a hand waving.
Mm-hmm.
The audio, the video, and the audio.
She said it's okay. I think she's still trying to find it, but and then Prashant, you've got
I can mute her.
unmute her. Yeah, that'd be great.
So sorry. Okay, hold on a second.
I think Anna's trying to get us off the hook, but
Okay.
I think part of what I see too, these are two great examples, right, of both specificity and sort of a range of projects, range of ways of talking about it. So I think part of what, I know that MJ and I have gone to pen to paper and heard different pitches, right, is part of what we end up doing in our feedback is, and of course, again, in this retreat, you spend a lot of time crafting this, so you spend a lot of time wordsmithing these words. So I appreciate, Prashant, your brevity, but you can actually give more context if you'd like. So the idea is that you could write it out in a sentence, right? The what of your work, to be like, what is this? So it tells us a brochure project, but I would love to know a little bit more about that, right? What does that project do? A brochure on what? And then, and it says as a mechanism to allow students to learn about plants, what students, are they undergrads, are they grads, what kind of class is it? So is this a class-based project? Are they independent study students? Are they graduate students? That kind of thing. And then thinking about, why. So when you say contributing to the larger community, I'd love to know what you think the contribution is of both the project, the brochure project, and maybe your students' involvement in this project, right? So is there a learning component that benefits the community, right? So that gives us an idea of how we can understand. So this is descriptive, which is really helpful. And then thinking a little bit, as you look at the literature, what has already been done, and sort of maybe there's work already on, which I'm sure there is, on community gardens or on sort of content creation for community partners. And so what is it that this will help contribute to that research or to that area of the field? And then Mary Jo, do you want to look at Anna's and see if we want to offer any feedback there? I can take a crack at that.
Yeah, so one question I have, Anna, I mean, this is awesome and certainly relevant and timely. One question I have about it is, what we would want to know is what is the sort of community engagement? What does that look like? Is it with a partner? Is it with a set of partners? So you said pick a project to reduce emissions, and so one of my questions is that's definitely in the public scholarship realm, trying to understand in what ways is there engagement with community players or community actors. So that'd be something that I would want to know a little bit more about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are you clarifying? Okay, I see. Roommate, family, office, at work. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think so for us, again, it's really hard in this format, sorry, to kind of just have to capture your thoughts in the chat. Obviously, you know, we often, and we're, as Neer just said, actually, I want to reiterate this now. We're happy to talk with any of you. You know, we'll chat with you and your team about what format and structure might make the most sense in terms of any triaging you all want to do, but also you all, thank you, Nirja. We've got, you know, we'll have our contact information. I think it's in the slides. You are more than welcome to reach out to us. All of the editorial team, you know, fields calls or just has conversations and with folks. So, you know, I know it's hard to flesh all this out in a chat function. Let's see here. So I do want to, so for Anna, I think just, you know, we would at some point want to know more about that community engagement piece, and at least that's for the Michigan Journal. We might want to know about the process for selecting the projects or scoping the projects, or, you know, things like that. The kind of the process of engagement. But it certainly it sounds like a very cool, you know, powerful pedagogy that you are using there.
And then we've got a few more now. So we've got Holly's and then Dustin's. Holly, I'm just looking at yours.
Okay, I'll look at Dustin's.
Okay. And you're also, if you can find the unmute, you're welcome to talk it out with us too. We're happy to do it that way. I think when I said share, I meant verbally, because I always mean verbally because I'm an extrovert. But you're, you know, sharing in the chat is also great.
Yeah, I just don't know if there's an option for them.
There should be. Everybody should be able to talk, but I don't know if the problem was maybe everybody automatically muted, and I'm not sure.
I don't know. Ahmad, I don't know if we have, I don't know how long this would take, but is it possible to, it looks like only the moderators have access to the microphone and camera icons based on looking at participants. And I'm wondering if we could make everybody moderators so folks who do want to speak can do that.
They can be presenters, at least.
Or presenters.
Presenters. Yeah, that'd be great.
Either way. Sure, either way.
I can do that.
Okay, super. Yeah.
All right.
I can do. Let's see.
Okay. So sorry, I'm trying to.
I can start.
Okay.
Okay. I can take the bottom half, making presenters.
Hi.
Can you see now?
Hi.
Hello.
Oh,
Is this Dustin? Who is this?
This is Prashant.
Oh, hi, Prashant.
Hi.
wonderful.
Hi, Holly.
Glad you can speak.
We're so glad you have a voice.
You did not realize.
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
I think everybody's there now. They can
Great.
all, okay.
Okay. So
now I think we could either go in order. We could have folks raise hands and just talk through, or ask questions about your particular pitch if you're interested at this point. We've got about 15 minutes.
yeah. We've got a few that posted, so maybe we can.
You want to just go through?
Yeah, Holly was the next person we hadn't addressed.
Okay.
This is great, Holly. I'm just reading it over. What was that? I can't hear you very well. I'm not sure. I'll mute myself so I can hear you better.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
This is Holly. This is Holly.
Yeah.
Sorry, my daughter is doing something in the background that might have been coming through.
Ah, we hear you now.
No worries.
Awesome.
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Okay. So I was just framing this as something that's, a project. I've been beginning to collaborate with this organization, but I haven't framed it yet as something that we might publish on and where we might do collaborative research on, but it's something.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the thing I was struggling with a little bit was framing this as a sort of like a research endeavor rather than framing this as like one particular article that I want to write, because I would definitely write that differently.
Mm. Yeah, and I think part of when we think about these, at least the way that we've used them when we've done pen to paper as editors, is we ask people to consider, a particular article, right? So thinking about, in this case, they would be pitching to different journal editors for different journals. So they pitch their idea, and then the journal editors actually help them think about whether it's an appropriate project for their journal, given what they name, right? And so, and I think you can think about your research in general, but I think thinking about very specifically to a particular article, a particular product that would go to a journal, I think can help give some frame to what you're trying to think about.
Yeah, definitely. So once I, have some data, or if, we're able to do something like collecting some narratives from community members, from practitioners, then we would have more specific things that I could put into a pitch for a particular article.
Yeah, for sure. And I think part of, and I think what we know that when we've talked with other authors, the biggest challenge is, all the data you collect can tell multiple stories, right? So it's always figuring out, well, what of those do I want it to say in this particular article, right? So you could have one that's about, what this says about reproductive justice, right? And it could be one that's about the experiences of the families, and how you are supporting them. It could be the experiences of the students, right, and their learning in this partnership, right? So there could be so many different pieces, and it's not that any one is wrong or not appropriate. It's more of like, well, for the particular focus, how will you talk about it, right? Whichever you take, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I also just want to add, and Dustin, we can maybe talk about your thinking at some point in a minute, but I also just, partly why we shared sort of the graphics and talked a bit about all the different kinds of products. I mean, we're obviously here because we're journal editors, and we're talking a lot about pitching to journals. But, this work focused on reproductive health could be a range could result in a range of products that could also be published, just not published necessarily in an academic journal. So white papers, briefs, and other things that could also be shared in different kinds of publishing mechanisms. So we just really encourage people to think about what are all the ways that your research project, or let's say your research project, can result in both lay products and academic products. So Dustin, I'm really interested for lots of reasons in what you're working on. We've been thinking about how we can work with the University of Michigan to extend and expand federal work study in particularly around community-based placements. So if you can bring your voice to the table, can you tell me more about kind of what you're thinking in terms of, like, are you thinking you want to talk about the process, or you want to talk about student outcomes, or you talked about providing support to community partners. Have you already engaged community partners? I'm curious to know more about kind of where you are or what you're thinking.
Yes. So, well, to that point, it does have a lot of layers, and there's a lot of ways it could go. And what's also interesting is right now the Department of Education and the Secretary of Education, they have started, forget the exact phrase they use, but they use the word experiment. And so there's several universities right now. I think it happened about a month or two before the pandemic really started to have us all work remotely, where basically students could use that funding and go into, I believe, private organization as well. So there's that move to privatize it, basically. But anyway, and then last year there was senators that tried to pass a bill to do something similar. But I mean, I agree with that in some sense of using the award to do something more intentional, right? And so you've got the way I think about it, I guess, is that my first point of, I look at it as it can be a precursor to an internship, which is considered, you know, a HIP, but so I mean, that's one way to look at it, is to just start to build the literature on community-based work study, which is fairly non-existent as far as I can tell right now. So yeah, I mean, I guess you could say I'm somewhat in the early stages of mapping out what it all could do, because it could do a lot. I mean, for example, and this was hard to write in that chat, but for example, you could have, I know we had at least 5 students in our program and who left on-campus work study jobs to join our program, and specifically gave me similar themes of, I feel like I've gone as far as I can in my on-campus work study job, and I want to do something that's going to help me and help my career when I graduate. So they were already cognizant of that. So that, I mean, that in and of itself is one study or article, I think. So I know I'm rambling a lot, but so that's kind of where I am with it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. There's actually a bit, unfortunately, Mary Jo and I both had connection issues while you were talking. So she is still trying to reconnect. Oh, I think she just joined back in, and I missed part of it. So I'm trying to, I was trying to, like, I didn't know how to signal because I couldn't connect for a bit there. But I heard half of what you said. I heard the back half. I'm hoping Mary Jo heard the first half. We'll see.
Hopefully it was just the good half.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely agree that you have a lot of material there, and that there is real implications for how work study programs can help, you know, with internships or other sort of career development pieces. Mary Jo, I don't know if you missed all of what Dustin said.
I feel terrible. I'm so sorry, Dustin. I did miss pretty much everything you said, except, well, pretty much. But what I would love to do is connect afterward. I'm fascinated about your research, but also would love to talk through any pitches or any ideas that you want to sort of flesh out or refine as you think about publishing.
That would be great, because I'm also looking at this for my dissertation as well, and particularly the male student experience in this program. So yeah, I would love to talk with you all one-on-one. I know I'm hogging the time here, so.
Oh, that's totally.
Well, that would be awesome. That'd be awesome, Dustin. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Are there other folks that want to chat, or are we?
Well, I think we're at pretty much at time. Okay. So I wanted to just make sure that we share really quickly some of the resources we said we would share earlier. So go back a little bit. So references, in our and then some resources, our own journal, additional journals, and I know Lily mentioned she had more journals in the book as well. And that, you know, the Compact Nation, that's another frame, that's a podcast from Campus Compact. It does some nice framing of engaged scholarship that might be helpful. We wanted to share the pen to paper retreat. Of course, this year it's canceled, but maybe next year when, whatever normal means anymore. And then this Principles of Community Engagement is a great resource for those who are either new to community engaged scholarship. It gives a lot of framing, lots of resources. It might be a nice complement or supplement to what Lily's already shared in the handbook. It just goes into a little bit more detail about different forms of engagement and scholarship. So we thought we'd share those. And again, as Mary Jo mentioned, we'll connect with Lily's team to see how we might be able to support you all. I think having either a follow-up session or like consultation time where you all could sign up for slots or something that might be helpful for those who would like to follow up with us. We really appreciate all the time you all spent with us. And Mary Jo, I'm sure you have something you want to add as well, but just want to thank you for engaging. I appreciate, I'm so sorry that you were not able to actually talk for almost the entire time. We did not realize, but hopefully you were still able to get, hopefully you were still able to get what you were looking for, and that's it. Mary Jo, do you want to add anything?
No, I mean, Lily and team, thanks for inviting us. We appreciate being able to work with you all on this. I just want to say, keep doing community engaged work, and however we can be helpful in helping you share that work in all kinds of fora, we want to do that. If just in case it's not clear, I think it's clear to the folks who are joining this conversation, this is what we need to be doing right now. This is how higher ed really conveys its relevance and its importance and its contribution to the public good. We have to create more permeability between the walls of academia and the real challenges that we face, frankly, as members of communities, but certainly communities who don't have all the benefits that we have. So I want to thank you for what you're doing. Going back to your whys, contributing to change is really, most of you put that in your answer in some way, and I just want to appreciate you for the work you're doing, and however we can bolster that work and nurture and support you as scholars, we definitely want to do that.
I'd just like to say thank you to everybody. Thank you so much, Mary Jo and Neerja, for doing this and working with us to make this happen. Most appreciative. And I've been sitting here thinking that one of the things I'd like to do for everybody is also to send out some ways for you all to think about the work you're doing. I think some of you don't think about it as community engaged work or work that's publishable, but I know that it is. And so I'm going to be setting out some ideas for you all to think about as you're framing your research and framing the work you do, because the people on this that signed up for this, they're our champions on our campus. They're the ones that really make the difference in the community. They're always on reaching out, and I'm always most appreciative of the work that everyone is doing as faculty, as directors, as doing outreach, and I can't thank them enough for what they do and for allowing us to be part of that with them. And we're here to help you with, as you're transitioning any courses, when you're participating in the community sustainability project and program and all the other ways. So I'm also here in our office, and our team is here to help you frame this, and we're going to keep going forward. We're going to work on tenure and promotion as we're going forward, even more so. So it's not just words in those documents, but that they'll actually mean something as you're going forward to publish around these issues. And so, and then we'll send some, I think we'll talk about how to follow up, and then we'll send out an email and communicate with all of you about how to keep working on this. You've got the whole summer. It'd be a great time to write about some of the things that you've done, particularly thinking about COVID-19 and how you had to get your classes to continue doing that work even though you were online. So I'd like to help you frame some of that. So thank you, everyone. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you, Imad, for helping us with this and for managing through it.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
All right.
Yes, everybody stay safe and healthy. Thank you.
Thanks, folks. Take good care. See you.
Thank you.
Bye.